It's Furiosa time. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga came out this weekend, and we're going to talk about it, see what we thought, and we're going to start with
Let's go
Zach.
to the lover of Mad
Oh,
Max, Terry,
should I
the
go
one who
first?
gave it a
All
thumbs
right,
down to Fury Road.
all right, I'm going first then. Okay, so Furiosa, it is the prequel to Mad Max Fury Road, which Zach already mentioned came out 9 years ago. So 9 years later, I mean, what does George Miller think? He's James Cameron or something coming out with a sequel like a decade after the first one.
Prequel.
But prequel, it's a prequel.
There's no
Yeah,
water in this movie, though.
there isn't. Yeah, so Furiosa, her origin story. This is the Charlize Theron character from the first one, and we find out how she went from being a child in this place of plentiful goodness to being the Furiosa we all come to know and love. This time, Furiosa is played by Anya Taylor Joy, and she is ripped from her home by a gang of just horrible people led by Chris Hemsworth, who plays Dr. Dementis, I think. Yeah, Dr. Dementis is his name. And she is Furiosa is a survivor, and she continues to find ways to survive. And she joins up with a crew that makes runs between the fortresses and deals with all the attacks that happen along the way. The leader of that group is Jack, played by Tom Burke, and we see how she is eventually able to find her way through, become who she is, get her revenge of some sort. It's kind of felt like if Mad Max had made a Kill Bill movie, and I kept on thinking throughout this that if Kill Bill were made today, Anya Taylor Joy would be an awesome Beatrix Kiddo. Um, I mean, all right, so this movie, I was not a fan of Mad Max Fury Road. I don't even know why. I need to revisit it. I still only seen it the one time. But from what I remember of it, it's this beautiful movie, and it has these really cool set pieces in it, but there's nothing going on, and there's no plot to it, and there's no purpose for any of it happening. Furiosa does a little better than that, because you know what the plot is, because you know it's following a known character, right? You know who Furiosa is. You know where this story has to end up. And so the whole time you're like, okay, so we're starting here and this is where we're ending up, and we're going to find our way there as we go along. As it is, it still leaves a lot of stuff unknown, and the plot is pretty thin, and it still relies pretty greatly on its set pieces. Little tiny shout outs to the huge fans of Mad Max Fury Road, which I don't even know if there are any 9 years after it was made. I'm giving it. I'm gonna give it 2.5 stars. It's better than Fury Road. It's still. It's not my thing. I don't know what it is. This is just not my thing. If you're gonna have a great action movie, you at least have to have something going on, and this has something going on, but at the same time, it just doesn't know how to tell a story. It's not interested in telling a story. It's interested in giving you an adrenaline filled um, rush as you go through, driving between the places and watching the tanker almost fall over and things blowing up, and watching Chris Hemsworth be psychotic. I mean, he's insane in this movie and doing something completely different than we've seen from him before, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I don't know. 2.5 stars. Oh, but my favorite part of this movie, I will say, I've watched Mad Max Fury Road. I said I've only watched it once. I've watched it 1.5 times because I stayed for the closing credits of this movie, and the
That's
closing
funny.
credits are very much a hey, remember we made another movie in this world before. It was called Mad Max Fury Road. It came out a while ago, and if you forgot what it's about, let me show you everything that it's about, because obviously everyone's forgotten about it. And I think the box office showed that in the fact that Garfield almost beat it this weekend. So that's my take on Furiosa. Uh, Todd, you go next.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I like this more than you do, but I think Anya Taylor Joy is awesome in this. She slowly looks and sounds more like Charlize Theron as it goes by, and she's not like a choice that you would think to be like an action hero, but I mean, it just shows that like she's totally badass in this. Like, and you could choose any actor to be an action hero if you have the right material. and this kind of is. Hemsworth is nuts. Like he's like if you cross like Jack Sparrow with Dante Reyes and the Joker. It's like he has like the aloof nihilism of Ledger's Joker with like the drunken movements of Jack Sparrow and then the line delivery and cadence of Jason Momoa in Fast X. Like he is awesome and on my short list of like my favorite villains of this year. The movie is mostly hit and miss though. Like when it started, and even with the previous for this movie, I was like I kept thinking it was like the Hunger Games movie from last year. Like they were about to break it out into song or something. It's not necessarily a bad thing because those movies are all pretty good, but I mean it just didn't really fit. And then it changes tones completely once the actual like first part of the plot kicks in. And George Miller is a madman. Like he has amazing imagination in this. Like he's clearly a fan of The General. Like I mean, in how he shoots his moving action, like the choreography and of the fights and everything on like the moving vehicles is like kind of amazing to watch. And it's like if you took like John Wick in in terms of action scenes and put it in a scenario like that's pretty familiar and repetitive, but it's still a marvel to watch because everything about it is just so unique in how the action is actually shot. And this is like a fun 2.5 hours. It's well edited and everything, and similar to Fury Road. There is limited emotional depth to it because there's not really a whole lot of plot necessarily, but there is definitely more story here than there was in Fury Road. But the weaker parts of the movie are the ending is pretty anticlimactic. I don't even really know what it was going for, and it was really kind of bizarre. And I think it's trying to be some sort of like feminist revenge thing, and I think it kind of fell flat. And there's like a handful of shots in like the first third that look like a green screen or something. When in Fury Road everything looked authentic, and this one like there were some shots that just looked not great. And it also was separated into chapters, which I didn't really think worked because the plot is thin anyway. Like, what are you exactly separating? And I don't really think it needed that at all. It hardly needed like to be broken up into scenes even. But these movies have a pretty high floor. Like this is almost a blend of like all of the previous Mad Max movies. It's probably 4th best out of 5, but it's still like a really solid 3-star movie.
All right, Zach, where are you at?
All right, Terry gives a thumbs down. Todd gives a thumbs up. I am going to agree with Todd on this one, and I want to put on the sound effect on Terry's review. Can you put on the boo sound effect? Boo! What was with that review, man? Thank you. A bit delayed, but what? So you know, just because you like the TV Glow, you're now an art house snob. You're too good for the Mad Max movies. You're making pithy remarks about I saw my favorite part of it was watching Mad Max over the end credits, and you're watching Gina Prince.
Yeah, you laughed at that,
movies,
by the way.
I did. It was a funny remark, but I'm just saying, when did you become the art house snob? Okay, Mad Max is a fun franchise. All right, now it did win 6 Oscars. And there were many long acceptance speeches, and it did get insanely great reviews. But at its core, it's just a fun, dumb summer movie. Todd's right. There's not a lot of great depth to the story or characterization. And Anya Taylor Joy and Tom Hardy don't talk a lot in the movies. Chris Hemsworth talks a lot. I was surprised how much he talked in the movie. But I mean, this movie's just fun. It is a great sort of inauguration to the summer. And I will say, going into it, I had pretty high expectations because it is George Miller, and because it did take a long time to make. Of course, Mad Max Fury Road, famously took 30 years to make because it was just, it took a long time to film and all that. This movie, for the first 30 minutes, was absolutely fantastic. It was my number one of the year. It was a 4-star movie. I felt just propulsion and kinetic energy to it. I thought if the whole movie had just been really young Furiosa, and shout out to the younger actress who plays young Furiosa, Alia Brown, but she kind of steals the show in this movie. The young Furiosa character and the dynamic that she has with Chris Hemsworth, which is a little bit reminiscent of the opening of Mad Max Fury Road, is just fantastic. And I love that. And I kind of hoped that the movie would turn into, basically just that piece in the movie, because of course Mad Max Fury Road takes place over like 2 or 3 days. And this movie takes place over like 20 years. And it is broken into chapters, very Quentin Tarantino-like chapters. And of course, when Furiosa runs off, there's a bit of Shoshana in that character and Hans Landa. And there's definitely some Tarantino elements in this movie. But I think it's a really fun movie. And, the Furiosa backstory is intriguing. I did not always know where this movie was going, and I didn't necessarily care. Now, we do need to talk about the CGI a little bit, because it kind of bothers me that people are critiquing this movie for using more CGI ostensibly than the original Fury Road. Okay, well, where were all you assholes when you called Avatar the greatest invention in cinema history? Where were you when you were talking about how great The Matrix was, or Titanic, or Sin City, or any of these, technologically advanced movies? And now you're saying, what, because Tom Cruise jumps out of an airplane and because George Miller shoots a movie practically, that you're against CGI? Like, I thought the CGI in this movie worked well. I actually went back and watched the original Mad Max Fury Road, which, by the way, Adam is right on. It is a absolute banger of a movie, one of the best movies of the 2000s. And one of the best parts about it is that it doesn't aspire to be, it just is. And that movie uses CGI too. What about the whole sequence when they're in the sandstorm? Like, that's all CGI, So I don't know. Like, and are you really telling me that, George Miller is happy to use CGI? I'm sure he's not. I'm sure he wished he could have shot everything like Buster Keaton in the 1920s. But I'm also sure that there were risks involved in that, people's lives. We have a remake of The Crow coming out. We don't need another Brandon Lee incident. But like, I just thought this movie was a total blast from start to finish. I do think it drags a little bit in the middle. But so what? I was happy to be there. I think Chris Hemsworth is definitely channeling Jason Momoa in Fast X, but he's also channeling some Matt Damon and Oppenheimer energy. I don't know what movie he's in. He feels like he's doing sort of his Fat Thor thing from Endgame, but it's not entirely uninteresting. It's just not, not to me as interesting as the guy with the skull in the tower. I also think this movie's getting some criticism because it's a female action star. I think there's some latent sexism in there. No one liked Captain Marvel and Black Widow and Madam Web, so of course we're going to shit on Furiosa. I think Anya Taylor Joy is great in this movie, and I think it is fun to see how she slowly evolves into looking more and more like Charlize Theron. We know at some point that the arm is coming off. It's kind of, and that the hair is coming off. Those are, I think, interesting sort of tensions in the movie about when those things actually happen. But no, I think overall, the biggest vibe I got from this movie is like Rogue One. Okay, whatever you think of Rogue One is kind of how you're going to think about this movie. Rogue One is a backstory about a pivotal event at the beginning of Star Wars: A New Hope, and this movie also ends in basically the exact same way, except instead of the explosion of the Death Star, it is the absconding of the what are they called, madams, or the mistresses. And it's great. I think it's unique. It's not as good as the first Mad Max Fury Road, but I commend George Miller for making this movie with audacity and intention, and I give it a very high 3 stars. And Terry needs to drink more of that summer juice, man, because this is a summer movie. It's supposed to be fun. You're not supposed to take it serious. Forget that the first one won 6 Oscars.
Well, who are you talking about that doesn't love this movie? It's got like a 90% Rotten Tomatoes.
The fanboys, man. Look at the fanboys. They don't like this movie.
Who are the fanboys?
They're assholes online, the trolls, I think this movie, it gets 90% because a lot of people probably saw the screener and just thought Mad Max. But I think if you look deeper at the fan community and reflected by what Terry was saying, the fact that no one saw this movie, I think this movie's getting a little more shit on than what the Rotten Tomatoes score would indicate.
It's not nobody saw it. It made almost 30 million or 25 million.
That's a bomb, man. That's John Carter energy right there. That is a disaster for that.
It's got like a monster budget though, does it?
Yeah, it was like $170 million. Huge budget.
So it's probably, it'll be a big hit overseas.
Oh, I doubt. Mad Max? That's not an overseas commodity. Like, that's another thing about this movie.
It's not even an American movie.
Yeah, but there's no characters that are going to be instantly recognizable. Mad Max isn't even in this movie. Like, I think I want to defend this movie in the way that we're going to defend Gates of Heaven, or Heaven's Gate, excuse me. I think this movie is going to go down as a legendary box office bomb based on the fact that Garfield
the first one was
a
bomb too. Like nobody watched Fury Road in theaters. That was a word of mouth thing that made it win Oscars.
I think comparing it to Rogue One is interesting because I kind of felt the same way about Rogue One. I was kind of disappointed by it, mainly because there wasn't a ton of plot and it kind of jumped around everywhere and was more concerned about the set pieces and the action sequences it was trying to accomplish than it was about what was actually happening. So that's a decent comparison. I going along, I thought the better comparison was Kill Bill. Like that's what, and especially the resemblance. Like I said, I couldn't stop thinking about how Anya Taylor Joy could be Beatrix Kiddo, and
That's not one of the
watching it,
people
there
we
was-
brought up when we did that.
I know
deep
we
dive.
didn't bring that up. Well, because we didn't think Anya Taylor Joy could be an action star, and then you watch her here, and it's like, oh man, that makes sense. Yeah, am I being too hard on it, saying 2.5 stars? Probably, but yeah,
But you didn't like the original,
right.
and it's at least consistent. Why didn't you like the original? You're like the only person that doesn't love that movie.
Like I said, I need to revisit it, but from what I remember, nothing happens. Like it's action for action's sake, with no one even attempted a story or anything that resembles a coherent plot.
That is patently not true. Okay, I just rewatched Fury Road. It has a great story, and the story is not always obvious what it is. You don't always, maybe if you've seen it only once, you could say, "Oh, this part is insignificant." No, I mean, there's actually a lot of foreshadowing in that movie, and it assumes that you know some things about Mad Max. But no, I think that movie is like actually really well plotted. Just because it doesn't have dialogue in it doesn't mean that there isn't a story. And I think this movie, I applaud the notion of making Furiosa a more complex character, but it does sort of remind you that the original is a better movie because it's tighter. Tight. This movie should have been 30 minutes shorter.
I think it's fine being 2.5 hours, but I don't know. I mean, I was definitely on board. I didn't think it dragged. I just think there were parts that didn't necessarily work all that much, but I liked it. We saw this movie together, Terry, with Adam.
This is true. Adam sat between us.
Adam only gave it 3 stars on Letterboxd. He was not as huge a fan of it either.
There's also a guy walking out he was giving commentary throughout the movie.
Oh yeah,
nice.
He walked out with like 10 minutes left, saying he was like, "I was hoping for a better movie." He said it pretty loud too. I was like, "Get out of here, you douchebag!"
I tell you, the fanboys don't like it. They don't like to see women superheroes.
The other one was at one point someone looks at Furiosa and is like, "Where are you going?" While they're on the road, and the guy goes, "Aspen." I thought that was.
Well, it's because it had the long road, and like she got dropped off, and she was waiting for the thing to come back. I was like, "Oh, okay, that's pretty funny."
Yeah, it was pretty good. But you could tell the guy was just totally making fun of the whole thing.
Do you think Ryan Gosling's character in The Fall Guy was a stuntman for this movie? And Jason Momoa was basically what Chris Hemsworth was doing, since Todd already made that comparison.
I'd say that it's possible.
Yeah,
it's possible.
By the way, I just want to note, you're giving The Fall Guy a higher rating than this movie, and higher rating than Mad Max Fury Road.
I think I gave Fall Guy 2.5 stars, didn't I?
Oh no, I thought you liked it.
I did, but I
consult the archives.
I'll look. I would. I'll say if I had liked Mad Max Fury Road, I probably would have given this 3 stars.
I didn't think you were going to like it. I was also curious about Todd's review because
I gave Fall Guy 2.5 too.
Okay. Well, you liked it more than I did. I was curious, Todd, if you saw like a little bit of like Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse or Across the Spider-Verse syndrome with this movie, which like I know you didn't like that movie, but like this movie I think had similar flaws in that it was just way too long, but too much, and it just kind of reminded you what a better movie the original was. Which is my reservation about it. Not to say that it wasn't a blast, but it just wasn't the original.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think those are mutually exclusive, but I wouldn't really make that comparison. But Rogue One is an interesting one, though. I was not a fan of Rogue One, but it's not. But I guess it would be for reasons that I didn't like this movie. So I don't know.
Well,
if you like Mad Max Fury Road, you'll like Furiosa.
And if you liked Rogue One, you'd like this movie. No one else has said that out there. You're hearing that first on this podcast. No critics. All the critics are talking about how, they don't like female superhero movies. But no one's talking about the influence of Rogue One on this movie.